Have to go now and talk to Humza Yousuf. He's the First Minister of Scotland. His wife's family is trapped in Gaza. He joins us now from Edinburgh in the UK. Good to have you with us, sir. So first of all, when's the last time you had any information or update about your wife's family?
We got an update this morning from my mother-in-law. The message said, "We're alive," and that's what we needed to hear. Beyond that, having exchanged a few more messages with her, it was a terrifying night. The building they were in, the house they were in, shaking. The 4 young children who are under the age of 7, the youngest only 2 months old, screaming throughout the night, as you can imagine, as the bombardment rocked their neighbourhood and rocked the whole of Gaza. And they are, my mother-in-law said, really down to their last supplies. They don't have much left. They had about 40 hours of supplies a couple of days ago, and that is now running very, very low. And as I say, there's a 2-month-old baby as part of the family, my wife's nephew. So the situation is absolutely dire. And that is why I've spent the last 24 hours calling for a humanitarian corridor to be set up to allow vital supplies to come into Gaza and to allow also the passage and the safe passage of people from Gaza to leave, because they are being told to leave, but they have nowhere to go. So
Mr. Humza, let me jump in if I may. And allow me to ask you a question. It might seem fairly obvious. The answer might seem fairly obvious to you and I and those who are familiar. But reading through some of the questions one sees on social media, the question comes up, why can't they simply leave? Explain to viewers why people don't have that freedom of mobility to simply, even at a time of conflict when their lives are in danger, they simply can't get up and leave Gaza.
Well, as many of your viewers will know, of course, that Gaza is and has been for over a decade and a half been under siege, has been under blockade. And we heard from the Israeli government that they were going to stop supplies of electricity, of fuel, of any supplies getting into Gaza. And I'll give you my own family's example. Yesterday morning, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were told that the Rafah border may well be open for them. And that is, of course, the border controlled by Egypt, that they may be able to get out if they made their way to the Rafah border right then and there. So they quickly packed a bag. They were saying their goodbyes. They're about a 30-minute car drive away. They were about to leave to get in the car when they were told the news that Rafah had been bombed and that the crossing was closed indefinitely.
That must have been very terrifying for you, the thought that they could have been in a spot that actually got bombed in an Israeli airstrike.
Absolutely. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And that is the point. Either they stay in their house in Deir Balah in Gaza, and there's a chance that they will not survive, or they make a journey to a border that is sometimes open, sometimes closed, and they may not make it alive to that journey. And I think this is my point, that I, as the First Minister of Scotland and the Scottish Government, completely understand why Israel wants to protect itself from terror. I understand that. But the price cannot be the collective punishment of 2 million people, over 2 million people in Gaza, the majority of whom are children, and the overwhelming majority of whom have nothing to do with Hamas.
And on that point, Mr. Yousaf, precisely on that point, if I may, the UN Human Rights Chief, Volker Turk, has been one international official who's condemning this total siege on Gaza as contravening international law. But since you are a UK official, let me ask you, have UK leaders been vocal enough on the threat it poses, the contravening of international law, those contraventions, the threat it poses to Palestinian lives, as they have been outspoken about any threat, of course, to innocent Israeli civilian lives?
I think this has been my plea, that, look, it is for those who are expert in international law to decipher and decide where there has been a controversial of international law. But I take this back to its very basics. I take it back as a human being to the humanity that each and every single one of us possesses. That there must be an equality of an Israeli life and a Palestinian life. They are equal. Just as I am anxious and worried about my in-laws in Gaza, there'll be many people in Scotland's Jewish community, for example, who are anxious and worried about their family in Israel. What we need leaders to do, whether they are in the West or the East, wherever they are across the world, is to treat an Israeli life and a Palestinian life as equal. And the collective punishment of over 2 million people in Gaza, men, women, and children, simply cannot be justified.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Humza Yousuf.